Hey and namaste everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Jacqueline van der Pooy and you're here at Call of the Inner Voice. So before I get into it, I just want to say to you that if you like what I'm saying, if what I'm saying resonates with you, then please subscribe, hit the subscribe button. You can also like and share, which will be very, very helpful for me to get more listeners and more followers. So thank you. So let's jump right in. So the subject I'm going to talk about today is, does a title make the person? Does your title make you a better person? Does it give you privileges? Does it mean that you have discovered the secret of life? Does your title help you in any way when it comes to the emotional world, when it comes to the inner world? I think that's quite an interesting subject. And a few years ago, I actually wrote an article called What is a Spiritual Person? And I wrote that article because of my own perceptions about what it was to be spiritual. What the actual title spiritual meant. And I think the thing is that we can get very, very caught up in titles, in somebody's status, because of the label that they have behind their names, or even the letters that they have behind their names. We can get very, very caught up in these labels and the titles that people are given, and we think that it makes them so much better than us. We give away a lot of our power to these people that we perceive to be better than us because of their status or because of the title that they hold in society. And when I wrote that article, it was really because I was asking myself the question, what does it mean for me to be spiritual? And at that time, I had my own perceptions of what spiritual meant. And those perceptions are very limited. They were very much like in a square box, which meant you couldn't do certain things, because if you did those certain things, it meant you weren't spiritual. And of course, at the beginning of my journey, I wanted to fit into that label that I had given to myself. And I think my ideas of what spirituality meant was shattered when I went to a 2-day workshop. And this workshop was given by a Buddhist nun. And this Buddhist nun was totally nothing like I thought a Buddhist nun would be like. She was brash. She swore. She was sharp. She told the audience off if they said something that she didn't like. She was all the things that I didn't think a spiritual person could be like. And so that made me ask the question of, what is it that we perceive when we come to a title, when we're confronted with a title? What is it that goes on in our minds? What is the process that we go through? Well, of course, when we have a person that has a particular title, that title creates a judgment in us. It creates expectations in us. We start to imagine what that person should be like based on the framework that we think that title entails. So this monk was totally different to what I expected a monk to be like. But my conclusion to the whole thing was that she was human. Regardless of her title, regardless of all her years of being a monk, she was human. She was human, and she was on her journey just like all of us are. She was going through her life process, whatever that may have been. And that didn't make her any less spiritual or any less human because of what she was going through, what she was doing, how she was behaving. In all of that, she was totally innocent to my own thought process. She was not a part of that at all. All of that was going on in my head. She was just being herself. I was the one who labelled her as spiritual or gave her that title because of the fact that she was called a monk. And so if I try to explain it a little bit more, I think it's really interesting how we base our actions, or our actions are determined by somebody's title. We behave in a particular way when somebody has a very high level title, or we perceive it to be high, and we behave in another way when that person's title is low, or we perceive it to be low. So, for example, if we were invited by the Queen of England to go and have tea with her, we would be like, wow, totally excited. This is amazing. I'm going to Buckingham Palace or whatever. But if we were invited to tea with our local cleaner, we wouldn't be quite so excited. And the point is why? Why is it that the title means so much to us in our human life, in our daily lives? Does the title mean that that person is so much better? Having a title that's perceived to be high in society, does that make the person? Does that mean that that person is special? Does that mean that that person has discovered, the secrets of life? Does it mean that that person can give you advice about, all the stages of your life that you're going through, your problems, your issues? Does that mean that that person is in contact and in connection with themselves? Does it mean that that person doesn't have any problems at all? That that person is, totally at one with all that happens in their life? I don't think so. But I think it's interesting for us to consider this, consider what I'm actually saying, because a lot of us give away our power to a title. Okay? We give away our power to a title, and we have much greater expectations to particular titles, certain titles, than we do to other. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so for example, you have somebody who is your best friend. That best friend you've grown up with, you shared, your years with, your younger years, you've grown up together, and suddenly, after years of study, that person becomes a doctor. When that person becomes a doctor, your relationship with that person can potentially change, because now that person now has a title of doctor, and that title of doctor has a perception behind it. When they were just a normal person, when they hadn't done all that study, they were your friend, and you could talk about everything. You could meet together, you could have lunch, you could go out for dinner, you could talk and go dancing, do whatever. Suddenly, when that person became a doctor, everything changed. Their circle of friends changed. They started hanging out with, doctor friends and, other people in the medical profession and so on. You feel left out because you don't have a doctor degree. You're just, a normal person. Maybe you have an undergraduate degree or something, but you are not a doctor. Okay, so your perception of your best friend has now changed. Years and years of living together, years and years of, spending important times together has now become diminished because that person has a title which is now doctor. You perceive them differently. They also perceive themselves differently. Society perceives them differently. Consequently, the whole, your interaction and relationship is now different. That's just one example. Maybe that's quite a small example, but I think you're getting what I mean. What I'm also intrigued by, although I was watching recently the film called The Two Popes. I don't know if you've seen that film. It's on Netflix. And it describes a phase where the current Pope was about to become Pope, and the outgoing Pope wanted him to become Pope. And so it was their kind of discussions about, what should happen and everything, and whether the new Pope should actually accept the post as Pope. And I thought it was very, very interesting because before he became Pope, he was an archbishop. He was, quite normal. He was able to get onto a plane. He was able to travel economy class, travelled by himself, went to see the current Pope by himself. They had discussions and they discussed all the things that had gone wrong in, the first Pope's tenancy. And I mean, he was really like a normal person. But between him being a normal person and him becoming Pope, so much changed. The title of Archbishop to the title of Pope, there's a really, really, really big, vast difference between those two titles. The way that he was perceived when he was an Archbishop to the way that he was now perceived as Pope was totally different. Now he had the whole world at his feet. You know, St. Peter's Basilica was totally full of people, hanging on his every word. A day before that, he was literally almost unknown. Only known in his nearest circles. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is that a title can do so much. It can change so much. It changes people's perceptions. Has so much more expectations. It can, it can do good as well as it can do bad, is what I'm trying to say. The fact that he's now Pope doesn't mean that he's any different to the person he was the day before he became Pope. His struggles are the same. Now maybe he has a team of people to help him go through those struggles, but the inner struggles cannot be helped. He's exactly the same person that he was before he became Pope, but the world perceives him differently. The outside world sees him as totally different. And I think this is what I'm trying to make, the point I'm trying to make, is that our title, the title we hold in society, is only valuable in society. It's only society that requires that we have a title. Society needs us to have a hierarchy, or let's say society itself is built on a hierarchy. So there's a hierarchy of position. We have people that are in governments and, presidents and prime ministers, popes, archbishops, priests. And then we have, the lay people, doctors, psychologists, engineers. These are all titles that people long for. They want, to be these titles because it gives them status in society. Society then perceives them as valuable. Those who are cleaners and, road sweepers and dustbin collectors, they don't have much status. They do very, very important jobs, but society doesn't perceive the job that they do as important, and they have not so much status. But regardless of the job that you do, doesn't matter what job you do. You could be, the president of a very big country, an important country, and still not be happy. And you could be, the local road sweeper, the person who picks up cigarette ends that people just, throw down. You pick them up every day. You could be the happiest person in the world. Title does not make the person. Your title does not make you. Your title does not give you any more importance or privilege outside of society. Outside of the societies that we have created, human beings have created. But ultimately, your title does not make you happy. Title doesn't make you a better person, doesn't make you more loving, more compassionate, more understanding, more trustful. Doesn't make you any of those things. It just gives you a particular status in society. Society recognizes that you have achieved a particular level of education in some situations. So if you're a doctor, for example, it means that you've gone through doctorate training. You've gone through 7 years of study. And those 7 years have culminated in you becoming a doctor. But as a doctor, it doesn't mean that you know everything. It doesn't mean that you know everything. And this is what we tend to do. Normal people, lay people, we give our power to those people that we think are in positions of power. Those people that we think know much, much more than us, know better than us. And we trust them fully with every aspect of ourselves. But just because they are wearing a white coat doesn't mean that they know everything. I'm not trying to put down anyone or their level of education or anything like that, because myself value education. Yes, but it's education. That's what it is. It's education. We give our power to institutions. For example, we give our power to governments. But I want to break that down a little bit. We give our power to governments. I think about it and I think, what is government? What is government? Government is a name. It's an institution. It's a building. But ultimately, if you strip it right back to its core, its inner, comes down to people. It comes down to people. Government is a title that we give to the people who are in those positions to govern, right? But ultimately, when it comes down to it, when you break it all down, it comes down to people. Governments are people. Governments are people like you and me. They have gained a certain level of education in some situations, a certain amount of experience in business, have enough money that they're able to challenge others to get into power. But the people in government are just that. They're people. People like you, people like me. We give our power totally to these people that we perceive to be better than us, more intelligent than us, cleverer than us, more knowing than us. But ultimately, they are just people like you and me. Yes? And so, what I'm trying to get at is, don't give away everything because a person has a title. Don't give away your power. Just because they have a title that is perceived as being high-ranking in society doesn't mean that that person is a good person. Doesn't mean that they are trustful. Doesn't mean that they are worthy of that. Doesn't mean that. All it means is that they have attained a certain level of education, experience, in their particular field that has allowed them to rise to that position. They bleed when they cut red blood, just like you do. When somebody throws the stones at them, it hurts just like it hurts you. Their position of elevation doesn't mean that they are not human, doesn't mean that they don't have the same life challenges that you have. Yes? So a title does not make the person. A title is just a name that society gives to you, that we give to ourselves. Doesn't mean that we're better, more experienced, more trustful, more loving, more caring. All the important aspects of life. And so for me, it's really about all the time thinking about what the title means, because friends or family members say to me, "Oh, but they have this position. I expected them to be like this, or I expected them to be like that." There's especially for celebrities, those who have the title of a celebrity. We perceive them to be people who are happy, who have everything. They're on TV. They're on the big screen. We see them in our cinemas. They look great, beautiful bodies, perfect hair, perfect skin, square jaw, abs all over the place. But they're acting. They're in a role. And that role isn't their life. It's not their real life. Their real life could look totally different. And in a lot of cases, it does. It does look totally different. Okay? But they are a celebrity and we see them up there. A lot of us, we look up to them. Wow, I want to be like that. I want to have lots of money and, have lots of influence. Having lots of money and lots of influence doesn't mean that you are happy. Title does not bring happiness. your title does not bring happiness. All it does is it says that you have attained a certain level of education, of let's say a certain level of education, but also that you have risen to a certain level in your particular field. So you could be, a professional dancer, and you could be a fantastic dancer. You come to a very high level in your particular field. That's all. That's all. Yeah, we shouldn't look to these people and think that they have all the answers, because they don't. They are on their journeys just like we are. Even when it comes to spiritual people, gurus. We hear of gurus making mistakes. We hear of gurus being accused of sex offending and, squandering money and all sorts of things. And then we think, oh my God, they're supposed to be a guru. They're supposed to be like this. Yes, they are supposed to be, but they're not. They're not, because they're human. And they're on their journey. They're learning, they're growing, experiencing, making mistakes, correcting themselves, or not correcting themselves, as the case may be. But the title does not mean anything. Our title does not mean anything. And this is what's really important for me, is that, I speak from my experience. I speak from my experience. I don't want to be called a guru or anything like that. I don't think of myself as a guru. Just want to share. And I want people that I'm sharing to appreciate what I'm sharing. It's that simple. I think it's dangerous when we start to label ourselves. And then, of course, others want to label us, put us into positions of power, positions of status. And when we put ourselves there, it becomes very, very difficult for us to make mistakes, because we think that in our position we shouldn't make mistakes. But whatever position we have, it doesn't stop us from being human. And as human beings, we make mistakes. We make mistakes all the time. And the key to growth is to be able to admit you're a mistake, accept that you made a mistake, say sorry, and move on. Yes? But when you get caught up in whatever title you have, sometimes you have to just keep creating around that title, because that's the expectation that others have of you, and that's the expectation you think your title deserves. But a title is just a title. It's not you. It's not who you are. So when you start to identify with your title, that's when you get into trouble. And you just realize that, you're human. You're human. The title is just a creation of society. Doesn't make you a better person. Doesn't make you more compassionate or loving. Doesn't make you happier. Doesn't make you any of those things. Of course, I'm not saying that you shouldn't strive for a title. You shouldn't try and, get a title. I have a title. I'm a teacher. So that title gives me the ability to stand in front of children and impart information. But that information that I'm imparting doesn't mean that I'm better than them. That information that I'm imparting comes from a book or comes from the curriculum. It's just a very small learning potential. They're going to learn a lot more through living life and experiencing life for themselves. But that title of teacher allows me to do that. Stand in front of kids and impart information. And as a result, I get some money for that. Doesn't make me a better person. Doesn't make me more understanding or trustful or loving. Doesn't make me any of those things. Just means I've attained a certain level of education. That's all. So I think I've repeated myself quite a few times on the subject. So I hope that you actually understand what I'm trying to say, and don't give away your power. Do your research for yourself. Find out for yourself. Go inside. Allow your inner to guide you. Don't need to be guided by outside things, outside forces. Let your inner guide you, because that inner is very, very strong, wants to guide you, wants to help you. Okay? Don't give all your power away to those who you perceive to be more powerful than yourself. All of us are human beings. All of us are in our journey. All of us are learning and growing. There's nobody that has all the answers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here on earth. They wouldn't be going through this life journey with us. Okay? So I hope this has been of interest to you. I hope that you found it informative in some way. If you have, I ask you to please subscribe, like and share. Okay? You can also read the What is a Spiritual Person blog that I wrote at www.calloftheinnervoice.com. So that's it for today. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you and namaste.